Jonathan Goulis, we've been trying to get this interview for a while. I'm really pleased that we're going to do that today, because you've been very brave in speaking out about your own mental health, and so the bulk of this interview will be to focus on that. You were the victim of bullying when you were a teenager. Can you tell me the nature of that bullying?
So it started off with name calling and teasing, and there were times with some kids it got quite physical, but the main issue was just the isolation within the school, really, kind of being ostracised from my peers, constantly worrying about the small group of friends I did have, whether or not I'd be socially acceptable to be around. And it went on for a long time. And I suppose it took a long time for me to start wanting to talk about it. It created a lot of anger and a lot of depression as well over time, and constantly wanting to try and be part of the in crowd and probably playing up more than I should have done. And I remember my mum sort of worrying about my behaviour, because, you know, I was a reasonably bright kid, I'd like to think, but I was playing up in lessons or outside of the classroom.
To fit in?
To try and fit in, to try and sort of divert away from the nature of what the bullying was. And this constant want to be sort of accepted by my peers, and never actually feeling like I achieved that. Yeah, it took a toll on me.
You said it went on for a long time. Roughly what age to what age?
Probably from year 7, so what, 11, 12, up to 14, 15 years old, until I sort of eventually decided that, well, I snapped and eventually had to start opening up to my family about what was going on.
Did the school sort it out when you did open up?
The school were good in some ways. I remember my dad being really angry with the school because he felt that signs were there and they were missed. I had opened up with the chaplain at the school I attended, sort of right before I opened up with my family, and that was really helpful, finally having someone to talk to. And I remember she was one of the kindest ladies. She had her own battles with her own physical health. She had actually MS. And so we ended up sort of talking about the vulnerability, you know, of one another, and it was nice to actually feel that you had someone to lean on and go to. But yeah, I must say, I thought that the school was okay. The school was okay. I mean, it never really, sort of, it did die down when the school intervened, but it was always sort of there quietly in the background.
It's an awfully long period of time to go through that. And it led you to self-harm?
Yeah, mostly cutting in places that wouldn't be easy to be seen. A couple of times overdosed on tablets and stuff like that. Not as many as I, you know, would need to obviously cause myself, you know, kill me, but enough to sort of realise I was in a really bad place. Near where I grew up in Alderminster, there's like a country walk that the family used to do as a family all the time, and there's this one particular spot that I talked about in an article that I sort of planned that would be the place I would eventually take my life. Far enough out of the way that a stranger wouldn't stumble across it. I was going to give the sort of police advance notice, but knowing that by the time they'd arrive on the scene it would be too late. Enough that my family wouldn't come across my body. But I suppose for me, I'm my father's only son. My grandma and granddad on my dad's side, I'm their only grandchild. I just, you know, that was a reason to live, as well as obviously my mum, my stepdad, who I call dad as well, confusingly for people, and my brother. But yeah, I just knew the trauma that would leave to my family, and I didn't think that was fair on them. And I'm thankful for that, because I have a very loving family. So because of them, I was able to, you know, avoid doing the worst thing possible.
This is while you're at school, you're thinking of taking your own life?
Yeah, pre-GCSEs.
How long did the self-harming continue for?
It's probably a couple of months, not too long. I did a lot of sport, so in and out of changing rooms a lot. I was always mindful that it might be visible, so I was just mindful of the fact to not try and go down that road, and also scared, to be quite honest with you, but if I did go down the road, how far it would go. You know, you could read things online and sort of hear other stories or TV dramas, you know, learning about this stuff. So I was mindful of the fact that I didn't want to become me. I didn't want to mark my body where I'd always see something that I would be ashamed of. So I fought it pretty hard for as long as I could do.
When was the last time you self-harmed?
So it was, I think I said this in the Stoke Sentinel, it was not long before the general election, not long sort of after I got selected as a candidate. A lot of pressure, you know, working full time, trying to be a parliamentary candidate. My mental health slowly deteriorated around my weight. I think I comfort eat a lot, which is bad, a lot of sugar and carbohydrates and all the stuff you're not meant to shove in your body all at once. And so I was starting to hate who I was because of how I looked. I wasn't opening up enough with people around me to sort of share my fears, my concerns, my stress, my anxieties. And it's a sort of telltale sign with when I know I'm going to a dark place that I isolate myself and I put on a facade that everything's fine and I'm okay. But actually, I just needed someone to reach out for. And I suppose I was scared to talk to my mum and dad about it. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want them to worry about me. And also partly because you want to think you're fixed. You want to think that you get through it. And actually what I've learned to accept is that you never are fixed. And actually you shouldn't look to be fixed. What you learn to do is cope with the pressures of life and cope with the ups and the downs that come with it and handle those moods. You know, I'm very lucky now. I've got a fantastic partner in Nikita who's so supportive. I've got 2 amazing children, 2 under 2, which believe me takes its strain, Amelia and William, but I just love them to death and that's my motivation. And I've got, sorry, I should say, the 2 dogs, Bella and Bailey. Who,
they'll never know if you didn't mention them.
I know, they'll never know, but my family is my absolute drive for everything, regardless of whether I'm a member of Parliament or not. That will always be the thing that keeps me grounded, keeps me humble, keeps me in check of myself, and knowing that I've got Nikita whenever I'm needing that person to reach out to is a lifesaver, quite literally.
So things that can help when one is struggling with their mental health: seeing a psychiatrist, there's medication, there's counselling. You saw a psychiatrist when you were a teenager? I
was extremely lucky. You know, unlike what the situation is out there now, I went to my GP and within a matter of weeks I was in front of a psychiatrist. Had some really intensive cognitive therapy, which was brilliant for me. I couldn't praise the NHS more in the service that I got and the support I got to get me out of that rut that I was in. You know, I had some difficult times later in life and I was offered medication, which I took. It just didn't work for me. I felt worse, if anything, actually, on the medication. And so about a month, I just packed it in. And I did stay in touch with my GP about sort of how it was going, and I did persevere, but I was getting scared. I was actually getting more and more depressed. And I remember, like, I lived in this place where you could see a bridge over a canal, and those dark thoughts about that tree in the middle of the countryside sort of started to link those 2 ideas together. So I came off the medication, got myself some cognitive therapy again, which was really helpful. And look, I was lucky. I was on a salary as a teacher that was much more than the national average, and so I was able to pay for that private therapy, and I still have therapy now. I'm not ashamed of that. You know, I still have a really good therapist that I do virtual calls with once a week, just to literally talk about the stress of this job and balancing life with my family and trying to obviously be a proactive constituency MP and getting to and from London all the time, being away from the kids. You know this, Gloria, you've been a member of Parliament yourself. It puts a lot of pressure, so it's just good for me to have someone to talk to. But again, I'm lucky that I'm in a financial situation to do that, and what breaks my heart is there's a lot of people who aren't in that situation, which is why, as you know, I'm leading that No Time to Wait campaign with my good friend James Starkey, who you've interviewed, because we want to make sure that we get a mental health nurse in every GP surgery, because they estimate now 40% of appointments for GPs are mental health related. So if that mental health nurse is there to triage, and sometimes it's just emotional resilience, sometimes just having someone to talk to and get things off your chest that's not your family, not your friends, not going to judge you, and not going to push back and question. And so, you know, if we crack that nut, I think we'll go a long way to sort of helping, but it's not the silver bullet, obviously.
So you speak to a psychiatrist
once a week.
Once a week. How long has that been for?
Probably about 3 months now.
3 months.
3 months. just I suppose with lockdown, my mental health was quite badly affected. It wasn't until towards the end of lockdown I started to realise how much I resented having to just be kept inside my home, and just wanting to make sure that I was trying to support these people and seeing the emails that were coming in, the pressure of people were under, and tragically people losing loved ones. It broke your heart on a daily basis, and feeling like, am I doing enough? Being a new MP, not really knowing the system and having to learn the system whilst also trying to help people through an unprecedented time put some pressure. Then having Amelia born in August 2020, and then William was born in February of this year. So, that I just felt that it was just good for me to find someone just to sort of let some steam off every now and again and have a chat.
Were you at the birth of Amelia?
I was very lucky that in the hospital I had to wear a face mask the entire time. That was quite frustrating because I've got a beard, so it gets quite itchy under there.
But thankfully you
I was, I was lucky. She did have to stay in because for antibiotics, as did Nikita, and I was under the rule where it was 1 hour a day. That was really difficult, only being able to see my firstborn and my newborn 1 hour a day for 5 days, not knowing or hearing anything from the doctor, nurse, having to rely on Nikita to feed back, but she's not a doctor or nurse, she's a teacher. So, things that she was being told, she necessarily wouldn't always relay perfectly to me, because I was being such a warrior. I think she got quite frustrated at times with me. So yeah, that was really difficult.
I'm interested, you've talked about a number of things that when you go to dark periods that you have used, that have taken you to dark places, whether that be self-harming, overeating and suicidal thoughts. Is it possible to nail for good? We can take them in turn if you want. Self-harming. Can you be confident that?
Yeah, I won't go about there. That's absolutely nailed.
Suicidal thoughts.
I'm fairly confident with that one. I haven't had them since the last time I self-harmed. So that's 2019. So that's a long time ago. And I'm feeling very confident that won't come back, because I've got those kids. And I look at my daughter, I look at my son, and how unfair on them to one day be told why I wasn't around. Children need their father as much as they need their mother. I have a social responsibility and a moral responsibility and parental responsibility to be there for my children, the good, the bad, the ugly. And so that's my absolute drive and determination.
What about overeating?
No, I've got a real problem with food. I don't know how to crack that nut. That's one of the things I'm working on right now, is we're trying to figure out where that comes from. I think it's related to self-worth, self-loathing. What my therapist, what does he say? Chris tells me I need to be kinder to myself.
You really do.
Just need to be kinder to myself. But
you're very impressive.
I find that hard. I find that hard. I don't want to be like, I just worry about, don't want to look like an arrogant so-and-so. And I have worked hard to get where I got to. Yeah, I went to a really good school. I had a
state school.
I went to a private school,
okay.
First in my family. I had every advantage my mum and dad didn't have. We didn't go on the big fancy holidays. They poured their money into sending me to that school to make sure I had everything going for me. So because my dad failed his O-levels and went back to that school to be a cleaner during the day, and then he did night school. He's my inspiration. He went through, then he did, I think he worked as a receptionist at the council to do his night school for A-levels. And then he ended up doing Open University, which changed his life. And then my mum was on council estate in London, got into grammar school. So, I've seen the power of education, and that's why my parents were like, you're going to knuckle down and get your grades, and, you're going to have everything we didn't have in terms of the starts in life, and then you need to make the most of it.
Do you think bullying in private school, I was so obsessed with researching your mental health that I didn't actually know that you'd been to private school. Do you think it's more, do you think bullying is more of an issue? Were you a boarder? Did you board?
No, I didn't board, no.
Right, okay.
I was only threatened with it if I didn't behave.
Right,
my mum threatened me then, but yeah.
Do you think there are cultural issues do you think it was anything to do with the nature of your school which amplified the situation with bullying?
I don't think it matters whether you're in a private school or a state school. I'd spent 8.5 years, being a teacher, and I was a head of year during that time as well. So I dealt with the behaviour, attendance, and safeguarding of kids in 2 or 3 of the schools I worked in. Social media nowadays is the worst, and the bullying that takes place on social media is horrific and horrifying. And parents are stuck because they come to us as a school, but obviously this is happening outside of school hours on a platform that we have no control over. This idea of how to look perfect, this over-sexualization of children is terrifying, and the access that these young boys, are able to get, to websites that they shouldn't be able to access, the websites that exist where they're basically coercing people in how to take their own life. I've actually had that case in my own constituency. I'm raising it about the Online Harms Bill because people who host these websites should be held criminally accountable. They're literally advising people on how to commit suicide. And there's streams of families out there scarred knowing that these websites exist, but also not knowing how to prevent those websites from being accessed, whether you're a young person or an adult. So we have to really look at this Online Harms Bill, for example, as a way to really start creating accountability in the system.
You're quite young, so...
Yeah, I'm 32 despite the hairline.
32, so...
My dad gave me this hairline and blamed him for it.
Did you ever look at any of those websites?
I don't remember, no, not being able to access it. I mean, my stepdad's a computer programmer, but I'm about as computer literate as as an orangutan, I think.
Good.
So
good in this
yeah,
instance.
I know. So it's quite a shame I never actually learned about technology, but properly. But yeah, no, I've never come across those myself. I just think the web, the internet, has just developed so fast, so quickly. I remember when the first phone came out with a camera on it, and it was like mind-boggling. I remember MySpace before Facebook, and when you tell kids MySpace was a thing, they just look at you like you're...
Friends Reunited, if you're really old, you'll remember that.
Friends Reunited, yeah.
I think the mental health of MPs, I don't think it's that good. Generally, it's obviously a massive generalisation, but I think there's quite a lot of ill mental health in Parliament. Do you ever talk to... would that be a safe space to open up to your colleagues? Is it getting easier?
I think it's definitely becoming easier as more and more people are being more open, and it was one of the things that I felt, by coming forward. I remember hearing Stuart Anderson give a really emotional speech in the House about his attempt at suicide, suffering from obviously his days when he was in the military, and it was the most heartbreaking but also one of the most open speeches I've ever seen in that House. And I was in the constituency, I watched it on my phone, I saw social media was saying, oh, this is amazing, and I tuned in and sort of watched it back, and it was incredibly and powerful. And I thought, if Stuart can do it, then if I do it, then more people hopefully will open up. But you are right, that it's the hours can be difficult because obviously that puts pressure on family. I take my daughter to nursery on a Monday, on a Thursday and a Friday, but I can't necessarily pick up because I have constituency events. On a Saturday, I'm having to balance between being out and about, campaigning or door knocking, but also taking my daughter to dance, looking after William, who's only 3 months, my partner actually having a life herself and being able to get out of the house. I think that is a real challenge out there for people, for members of Parliament. I don't think we're special. I think there's a lot of stresses and strains in any jobs. I mean, doctors, nurses, teachers, police, fire, throughout this pandemic, doing 12-hour plus shifts with all the pressures on them. I don't think that we're some sort of special breed that need any more special looking after than anyone else. But I do think MPs, we probably need to be a bit more honest about when we're struggling and not seeing that as something that's going to hold us back from greater office, whether that be the Prime Minister, the Chancellor or a Secretary of State. Actually, it means you're human and you're like everyone else, and you should be proud of that.
Thank you. I want to shake your hand.
No,
I want to give you a hug, but,
no,
we're English, so we'll stick with a handshake. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you
so much.